It was one of those evenings that felt stretched too thin, the kind where silence fills the spaces words used to live in. The TV murmured faintly in the background, more for company than entertainment. The kitchen light hummed, warm but tired. I stood at the counter, stirring pasta that had already gone soft. Ethan texted 20 minutes ago. Working late again, don't wait up. The words weren't cruel. They never were. Just empty. I remember when his late nights used to worry me. I'd ask if he'd eaten, if he was driving home safe. But somewhere between one promotion and another, I stopped asking. Maybe because I already knew the answers. Maybe because I stopped believing them. I set 2 plates out of habit, then one back. The small sound of ceramic against wood felt louder than it should have. Ethan's work schedule used to be a mystery wrapped in importance. He was building something big, meeting clients, closing deals. That was the language of ambition, of the man I fell in love with. But lately, ambition looked a lot like absence. I sat down with my dinner, scrolled through my phone, and found myself staring at our family photo last summer on the pier. His arm was around me, smile wide, eyes squinting against the sun. He looked real then. I wonder if I did too. The food grew cold before I took a bite. Sometimes I tried to convince myself this was what marriage turned into. Quiet dinners, busy careers, small talk between yawns. Normal, I told myself. This is what stability looks like. But stability shouldn't ache this much. I rinsed my plate, watching the water swirl down the drain. Then I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. Not sad exactly, just uncertain. Like a woman halfway through a life she didn't remember choosing. And then my phone buzzed again. A notification from Find Us, the family GPS app we set up years ago after a storm left Ethan stranded one night. I almost ignored it. It was usually just updates like Ethan left work or Ethan's battery is low. But this one said, Ethan, location updated, 9:42 p.m. Something in me, something small and restless clicked. It wasn't that I didn't trust him. Or maybe that's exactly what it was. Curiosity, suspicion, they wear the same perfume sometimes. I opened the app without thinking. The map loaded slowly, my thumb hovering. A tiny blue dot pulsed in the corner of the screen. Not at his office. My brain took a second to catch up. I zoomed in. The office was downtown, 20 minutes away. The dot was nowhere near there. It sat still in a quiet suburban neighborhood on the edge of the city, a place I didn't recognize. At first, I laughed. Just a short, nervous sound that didn't sound like me. He probably grabbed dinner with the client, I whispered to no one. Or maybe his app glitched. But the dot didn't move, and neither did I. I refreshed the screen. The location stayed the same. 9:45 p.m. He said he'd be working late, but the office lights would have been out by now anyway. I stared at that dot until my eyes blurred. Somewhere in the background, the faucet kept dripping. I could hear the clock ticking in the living room, steady, cruel. My thoughts split in 2 directions. One voice said, "Don't do this, Maya. You'll just hurt yourself." The other said, "You deserve to know where your husband really is." I leaned back in my chair and closed my eyes, trying to breathe past the noise in my chest. The smell of overcooked pasta hung heavy in the air. He'd done this before. Late nights, urgent calls, the project ran over. Each time I accepted it because love makes you gentle, and gentleness, when misplaced, becomes blindness. I told myself I trusted him, but trust isn't about words. It's about peace. And I hadn't felt peace in months. I picked up my phone again. The dot blinked once like a heartbeat. 9:52 p.m. Same place, same lie. The silence around me changed. It wasn't comforting anymore. It felt watchful, heavy. I imagined him there, wherever there was. Maybe sitting with someone, maybe laughing, maybe not thinking of me at all. And suddenly, I hated that my mind even had to guess. My thumb hovered over the call button. I could just ask him. I could say, "Hey, where are you?" and listen for the lie in his voice. But something in me froze. Because once you ask a question like that, you can't unhear the answer. I set the phone down, walked to the window. The street outside was quiet, lamplight stretching long across the pavement. Somewhere a dog barked, sharp and lonely. I thought about every night he'd come home late, the faint cologne that wasn't his, the shirt that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume, the excuses that sounded rehearsed. I had brushed it all aside. Until tonight. The blinking blue dot on my screen felt alive, like it knew it was being watched. I sat back down at the table, staring at my phone until the world around me blurred away. My fingers trembled just enough for me to notice. Maybe it was nothing, or maybe it was everything. Either way, I knew one thing. The quiet, obedient version of me, the one who believed his every word, was slipping away. And in her place was someone who wanted truth, even if it hurt. I don't remember how long I sat there, frozen, just watching that little dot. But I know this. When it blinked again, I felt my heart blink with it. That night, one small blinking dot changed everything. The clock on the oven read 9:58 when I checked the app again. The blue dot hadn't moved. I told myself a dozen different stories in those few minutes, each one weaker than the last. He probably went for dinner with colleagues. Maybe he stopped by a client's house. Or maybe the app's wrong again. But deep down, I knew the app wasn't wrong. It had never been wrong. I remembered the night Ethan installed it, 2 years ago after that storm. His car had broken down on a deserted road and he couldn't reach me because his phone died. I was terrified until he came home at dawn, soaked, apologizing, saying, if we'd shared our locations, this wouldn't have happened. The next morning, he added me on the app. He smiled when he said, now you'll always know where I am. Ironic, isn't it, that the very thing meant to bring peace now felt like a knife pressing against it? 10:06 p.m. Still the same dot. Still that same quiet street. I zoomed in. It wasn't near a restaurant or any commercial place. It was just houses. Rows of them. I pinched and dragged the map until I could see the street name. Willow Street. I didn't recognize it, but the name itself felt wrong. Too ordinary to hold a secret. Maybe he was helping a friend, I thought. Maybe someone needed him. He was kind like that once. Always ready to fix someone else's problem, even when he ignored ours. But kindness and secrecy don't usually share the same roof. I stared at the map, the blinking blue circle mocking me, pulsing steady as a heartbeat. 10 minutes passed, then 20. No movement. I picked up my phone to call him. My thumb hovered over his name. I imagined the conversation before it could even start. Hey, where are you? Still at the office? Why? No reason. He'd say it so easily, his voice calm, familiar, the same tone he used to tell me everything was fine. I'd want to believe him. I always did. But tonight, something in me wanted proof more than peace. I set the phone back down and leaned against the counter. My chest felt tight, my mind louder than the silence. I could hear my own pulse, steady and stubborn. There was a time when I didn't second-guess Ethan, when every word he said was gospel truth, because love made me blind, or maybe I made myself blind. I used to call that trust. Now it felt more like self-betrayal. 10:27 p.m. The dot blinked again. Still the same spot. I sat down at the kitchen table, resting my elbows on the wood, staring at the screen like it might confess something if I just waited long enough. Every time I refreshed, my heart dipped and rose, like watching waves crash in slow motion. I thought about how our marriage used to move like that too, highs that lifted me, lows that drowned me. But lately, it had been nothing but low tide, still, empty, airless. Maybe I was overthinking. Maybe this was one of those nights where the truth was boring and I was being dramatic. But then again, maybe not. I got up, walked to the sink, poured myself a glass of water. My hands were trembling, and the glass almost slipped. "Get a grip, Maya," I muttered to myself. "You're not that woman, the paranoid one who checks her husband's location." Except tonight, I was. And maybe, just maybe, there was a reason. I checked again. 10:42 p.m. Still there, no movement, no message, no call. The dinner plate from earlier still sat by the sink, the sauce drying around the edges. The house smelled faintly of garlic and loneliness. I opened the fridge, closed it, opened it again. My hands needed something to do. Anything. It was easier to move than to think, but my thoughts followed anyway. What if he's with someone? No, he wouldn't. Would he? He'd been distant for months, not cold, just unreachable. The kind of distance that feels polite. He still asked how my day was, still kissed my forehead, still said, "Love you," on autopilot. But I could feel it. The weight of something unspoken between us. Something I never had the courage to name. And now, a small blue dot was whispering that maybe I should have. I picked up my phone one more time, staring at the blinking circle. I could feel my chest rising and falling too fast, my throat tight. He used to call me curious, said it was one of the things he loved about me. But curiosity changes flavor when it's about the person you sleep beside. It goes from sweet to bitter in a heartbeat. I walked to the window and looked out at the street. Empty. Quiet. I imagined him. His hands, his laugh, the way his shoulders relaxed when he thought no one was watching. Was he relaxed now? Was someone else watching him tonight? The thought burned through me like acid. I picked up my phone one more time, opened the app, and refreshed one last time. 10:56 p.m. Still on Willow Street. The truth was right there, blinking in front of me, and I couldn't unsee it anymore. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted it to be something simple. A coworker in trouble, a flat tire, anything. But deep down, I knew this wasn't random. My gut had been whispering for months. Tonight, it was screaming. I stared at that dot until the edges of the screen blurred. The world outside felt still, like it was waiting for me to make a choice. And then, quietly, I did. I walked to the hallway, grabbed my coat, my bag, and my car keys. My reflection in the hallway mirror startled me, not because I looked scared, but because I didn't. I looked certain. I whispered it out loud, maybe to convince myself. Just 5 minutes. I'll just see. The lock clicked behind me, the sound small, but final. And as I stepped into the cool night, one thought stayed sharp in my mind. Sometimes, curiosity doesn't ruin peace. It exposes lies. The night air hit me like a question I wasn't ready to answer. It was colder than I expected, the kind of cold that wakes you up, that makes your skin prickle with something between fear and determination. The street was quiet when I stepped out. My car keys jingled faintly in my hand, that small metallic sound echoing louder than it should have. I opened the car door, slid inside, and sat there for a moment before turning the key. The dashboard lights came alive, washing the dark interior in soft blue. I glanced at my phone again. The GPS dot blinked steadily, still on Willow Street, still waiting for me to make a move.
I pulled out of the driveway. The city looked different at night, sharper somehow. Streetlights stretched across wet asphalt, painting long streaks of gold and white. Traffic lights blinked through the fog. My wipers swayed back and forth, slow and rhythmic, matching the beat of my heart. At first, I told myself I was being ridiculous, that I was only driving to calm my nerves, that I wouldn't actually go all the way there. But the lie didn't last long. My hands gripped the wheel tighter each time I thought about that little blue dot. I shouldn't have known the way by heart, but I did. I'd passed Willow Street once before, years ago, when Ethan and I were house hunting. I remember him saying, "Too far from the city," and me agreeing because he always sounded so certain. Now that certainty felt like something else entirely. Control, maybe. The rain started halfway there, a soft drizzle at first, then heavier, drumming against the windshield in uneven patterns. My headlights caught the raindrops like tiny sparks. Every streetlight I passed flickered through them, neon reflections dancing across my dashboard. Inside the car, it was just me and the sound of my breathing. Too fast, too shallow. I tried to focus on driving, but my thoughts had a mind of their own. They ran back to old conversations, ones that once meant nothing but now felt like puzzle pieces I'd ignored. Last month, when I asked why he'd stopped wearing his wedding ring to work, he'd smiled and said, "Typing all day scratches it up." Or when he came home smelling faintly of vanilla perfume and laughed, "Someone at the office wears too much. I'll tell her to tone it down." I believed him. Not because his excuses were convincing, but because I was tired of fighting ghosts. Now those ghosts had addresses. The rain grew heavier. My wipers struggled to keep up. The sound was hypnotic, almost comforting in a sick sort of way, like a heartbeat trying to steady mine. I looked down at my phone again, mounted on the dashboard. The dot hadn't moved in nearly an hour. Still there, still waiting. My mind swung between anger and guilt like a pendulum. One second, I hated him, hated how calm his voice sounded when he lied to me. The next, I hated myself for being here, for becoming someone who needed proof to feel sane. Maybe he wasn't cheating. Maybe he was helping someone. Maybe this was all innocent and I'd have to face him later, embarrassed and paranoid. But what if it wasn't? What if the truth was worse than the lie? The closer I got, the heavier my chest felt. My heart pounded like it was trying to get out. I turned onto smaller streets, the kind lined with sleeping houses and quiet driveways. My headlights swept across mailboxes and trimmed hedges. A few porch lights glowed dimly, warm against the cold night. Then the voice in my GPS broke the silence. Flat, robotic, almost cruel. "You have arrived at your destination." I slowed to a crawl. Willow Street was narrow, the kind of road people only use if they live there. The rain softened, turning into a mist, and there, parked along the curb, was his car, Ethan's dark gray sedan. I'd know it anywhere. The small dent on the bumper, the way he always parked slightly crooked. My stomach twisted. He wasn't supposed to be here. I pulled over a few houses away, engine still running. My fingers tightened around the steering wheel until they ached. The small house where his car sat was ordinary. White siding, a porch light glowing faintly yellow, curtains drawn but light leaking through the edges. Warm, soft light, the kind that belongs to laughter and comfort. My chest felt hollow. For a long moment, I just sat there, staring. I wanted to believe it was all a coincidence. Maybe you was helping someone, maybe it was business, maybe anything but what my heart already knew. But then I saw it. Movement.
a silhouette passing by the window, then another. I leaned forward, my breath fogging the glass. He was there. Ethan. Even through the rain, even through the glass, I could see the outline of his shoulders, the tilt of his head. He looked relaxed. And then I saw something I hadn't expected. His hand reaching out, touching someone else's arm. A woman's. She moved into view for just a second, her face hidden by the curtain, but her body language told me enough. She wasn't a stranger to him, and he wasn't working late. A sound escaped my throat before I could stop it. Half laugh, half sob. It startled me, like it came from someone else entirely. I shut off the engine. The silence that followed was deafening. My thoughts raced. What now? Do I confront him? Do I walk up and knock? Do I just leave? But my body didn't move. I just sat there watching the light inside flicker. I could hear faint laughter, distant, muffled, but unmistakable. He was laughing. If he was working late, who was he laughing with inside that house? The question pulsed in my mind, sharp as the rain tapping against the glass. I stayed there, motionless, staring at the house that now felt like the edge of the world. The GPS on my phone still blinked quietly beside me, confirming what my heart already knew. Ethan was exactly where he wanted to be. And for the first time in our marriage, I wasn't.
For a while, I just sat in the car, frozen. The rain had slowed to a whisper, soft and rhythmic, but inside me everything was loud. My heartbeat, my breath, the sound of my own disbelief. I could still see his silhouette through the window. Ethan, my husband, the man who said he was working late. He was there, alive and smiling, somewhere between my past and a truth I hadn't yet faced. I needed to know, not guess, not assume, know. So I turned off the headlights, slipped out of the car, and walked toward the house. The street was quiet. Only the distant hum of a generator and the soft hiss of rain against the pavement. My shoes soaked through instantly. My hands were shaking so hard I had to tuck them into my coat pockets. As I got closer, I could hear faint sounds. Laughter, light and warm, spilling from behind the drawn curtains. It wasn't Ethan's laugh exactly, but the way it sounded, familiar, intimate, the kind of sound that used to live in our home. My heart clenched. The gate creaked when I touched it. I froze, terrified the sound would give me away, but the laughter inside drowned it out. I pushed it open gently and stepped onto the small front path. The porch light was on, soft and yellow, haloed by the drizzle. Through the living room window, I could see him clearly now. Ethan. He was sitting on the floor, legs crossed, head tilted forward slightly, his hair messier than usual. His tie was gone, his sleeves rolled up. He looked comfortable, relaxed in a way I hadn't seen him in months. And in front of him, a little boy. I froze. My breath hitched. The boy couldn't have been older than 6. Brown hair, the same faint curl Ethan had as a child, the same chin, even the same way he scrunched his nose when he smiled. He was holding a toy car, running it across Ethan's knee, giggling. And then it happened. The boy looked up, eyes bright, and said, "Dad, watch this." My stomach dropped. The world tilted. The sound of that one word, Dad,
broke something inside me I didn't know could still break. He smiled, that soft, gentle smile I used to think was only mine. He said, "Good job, buddy." He reached out, ruffling the boy's hair. My knees weakened. My body wanted to collapse right there on the wet pavement. A woman appeared from the hallway, not the kind I'd imagined, not the kind I'd feared. She wasn't glamorous or young. She looked tired, like someone who'd worked too many hours and smiled too little. She carried a tray with 2 mugs of tea and set it down beside Ethan. For a moment, she looked at him, not possessively, not with seduction, but with the quiet exhaustion of someone who'd been doing this for a long time, someone who knew his habits. He thanked her softly, his voice easy, the kind of ease that comes with routine. Then the boy climbed into his lap and wrapped his arms around Ethan. He held him close, tight, like a man holding on to the only piece of his heart that still felt pure. I couldn't breathe. I should have felt rage, but all I felt was disbelief. It wasn't another woman. It wasn't an affair born of lust or excitement. It was something worse, something real. He wasn't cheating. He was hiding a family.
The rain started again, heavier now, soaking through my coat. I didn't move. My hands were trembling against the window frame. My throat felt raw, my heart pounding so loud I was sure someone could hear it. I watched for what felt like hours, though it couldn't have been more than a few minutes. Ethan helped the boy pick up toys. The woman said something that made him laugh, and the scene looked normal, domestic, peaceful. The kind of peace I hadn't seen in our home for a long time. And then it hit me. Maybe this was his home now. I stumbled back, my foot catching on the edge of the walkway. I nearly slipped, but caught myself on the gate, gasping. My vision blurred. I wasn't sure if it was from the rain or the tears. I turned and walked as fast as I could back to my car. My heart was racing, every breath shallow and uneven. I fumbled with the keys, finally getting the door open, and sat down, gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me from falling apart. Through the windshield, the house blurred into shapes and light. I could still see their shadows moving, small, harmless shapes inside a warm room. I started the car. My hands were slick on the wheel. The wipers came to life again, their rhythm matching the chaos in my chest. I didn't know where to go. Home didn't feel like home anymore. The road ahead shimmered with rain and headlights, distorted like everything I thought I knew. My mind replayed it all. Ethan's smile, the boy's voice, that single word, Dad. It looped over and over until I thought I'd go mad. The world outside the car felt distant, like a movie I wasn't part of anymore. I drove aimlessly, following the red glow of taillights, the hum of tires against wet pavement. At one intersection, I stopped at a red light. My hands tightened on the wheel, my heart pounding too fast. The light reflected off the tears on my cheeks, turning them into streaks of color, red, then yellow, then green. The car behind me honked. I didn't move. I couldn't. The truth sat in the passenger seat beside me like a ghost, quiet, undeniable, heavy. Ethan hadn't fallen out of love with me. He had just divided it. And that realization hurt more than any affair ever could. When the light turned red again, I finally drove through, not caring. My body moved, but my mind was elsewhere. Back on Willow Street, where a man I thought I knew was laughing in a house I'd never been welcome in. I didn't know what I'd do next. I only knew that something in me had shifted, quietly, permanently. The rain kept falling. The road stretched endlessly ahead, and somewhere behind me a house glowed warm against the night,
a house that had stolen the life I thought was mine. He wasn't cheating. He was hiding a family.
The drive home felt endless, a blur of headlights and empty roads. My body moved on instinct, my hands turning the wheel, my eyes blinking through tears that refused to stop. But my mind was somewhere else entirely. I wasn't sure when I stopped crying. At some point, the sobs just quieted into numbness, a hollow silence that hummed louder than the rain outside. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the house looked smaller, colder. It was the same two-story home I'd built my life in, but suddenly it looked like a stranger's house. I sat there in the car for a long time, the engine idling, the rain whispering against the windshield. I could still hear the echo of that little boy's voice. "Dad!" The word stabbed differently each time it replayed. Eventually, I turned the key off and walked inside. The house smelled faintly of the dinner I'd made hours ago, untouched, cold on the counter. A plate of pasta, a glass of wine poured and waiting. For him, I almost laughed. It wasn't the loud kind of laugh, more like a quiet exhale of disbelief. I poured the wine down the sink, the red swirling into the drain like a wound bleeding out. I sat at the kitchen table and just stared. The clock on the wall ticked louder than usual. 11:02 p.m. Ethan would be home soon. From his overtime. From them. My fingers tapped the table slowly. I wasn't sure if I was angry or just lost. Maybe both. Maybe neither. The silence around me gave space for thoughts I'd buried for years. Little things that had never made sense that I'd chosen not to question because love makes excuses easier than truth. I remembered the first time he said he was working late. It was a Thursday. I'd packed him dinner and he forgot it on the counter. When I called, he said, "It's okay. We ordered pizza at the office." Later that week, I found the box of pizza in our trash. Different brand, different side of town. Then came the odd spending habits, unexplainable withdrawals from our joint account. Work expenses, he'd said. Client dinners. But the receipts I accidentally found told another story. Groceries, toys, school supplies. Things that didn't belong to our life. My chest tightened. I hadn't noticed the pattern because I'd been too busy convincing myself that love meant trust, that his distance was stress, not deceit. Now I knew better. He wasn't chasing passion or adventure. He was maintaining a lie, feeding it, housing it. 2 lives, 2 sets of truths. One built on vows, the other on guilt. I ran my hand over the smooth surface of the table, tracing invisible lines. Everything here, this house, this life, felt like a stage set, and I was the prop he kept in place to make his act believable. The clock ticked again. 11:59 p.m. I heard the car pull into the driveway.
My body stiffened. For a second, I thought about pretending to be asleep, but then I realized I didn't need to hide. He did. So I sat there, still and silent, as the front door opened. His footsteps were careful, deliberate, the kind a guilty man takes when he hopes not to wake a sleeping wife. I watched his reflection in the glass cabinet as he entered the kitchen. His tie was gone, his shirt untucked, a faint smell of soap on his skin, not the kind he used here. "Hey," he said softly, surprised to see me awake. "You're still up?" I forced a small smile. My voice came out steadier than I felt. "Couldn't sleep. Rough day?" He nodded, looking tired. "Yeah, the meeting ran long. Client issues." I almost wanted to laugh at how smoothly the lie came out.
It was rehearsed, practiced, worn down by years of use. He leaned down and kissed my forehead. The touch made my stomach twist. I used to find comfort in that gesture, the quiet affection of a long marriage. Now it felt like a signature on a forged letter. "I'll shower," he said, walking past me. "You should get some rest." I watched him go, up the stairs, his familiar silhouette swallowed by the shadows of the hallway. The moment he disappeared, I let out a slow, trembling breath. The tears didn't come this time, just silence. Because what I felt wasn't heartbreak anymore. It was understanding, the kind that hurts deeper than pain. He didn't lie to chase love. He lied to bury shame. He lied to keep both worlds from collapsing, even as they cracked under their own weight. And the cruelest part, I almost understood it. That desperate, cowardly need to protect the image of a good man, even if it meant destroying the truth. As the shower started upstairs, I sat there and stared at the ceiling, at the sound of the man I'd built a life with, washing off another woman's home from his skin. Something inside me shifted then. Not anger, not hate, just clarity. That night, I stopped being his wife and became his mirror. If he wanted to pretend, I could too. I could smile, nod, play the part until the day I decided to stop. Because the one thing more dangerous than a woman betrayed is a woman who knows. The shower stopped. Silence returned. I walked to our bedroom, lay beside him when he came to bed. He reached out in the dark, his hand brushing mine. I didn't pull away. I let him think everything was still the same. But in my mind, something had already ended, quietly, completely. And though he didn't know it yet, that was the last night I ever slept beside him as his wife. That night, I stopped being his wife and became his mirror.
For 3 days, I said nothing. I cooked breakfast, folded laundry, smiled when Ethan smiled, all the while feeling the weight of a truth pressing quietly against my ribs. Every glance, every word between us became a performance. He didn't notice. He never did. I suppose that's what happens when someone gets too good at lying. They start believing silence means safety. But I wasn't silent because I was broken. I was silent because I was planning. The GPS app became my secret weapon. Every night, I opened it under the covers, watching that little blue dot move across the city. His office, his client dinners, his late meetings, all traced to one place, Willow Street, the house where my husband's other truth lived. I couldn't confront him yet, not without knowing everything, because what if the woman was a victim too? What if she had no idea? So I decided to find out. I created a new email, a fake name. I told myself it wasn't deceit, it was survival. The next morning, I drafted a message that made my hands tremble. "Hello, this is Miss Carter from the Community Family Support Office. We're conducting a confidential follow-up on family assistance claims in your area. I just need to verify a few details regarding household support. Please let me know if you're available for a short call." My heart pounded as I hit send. It was a gamble, but sometimes the truth needs a little disguise. Hours passed. I almost convinced myself she wouldn't reply. But at 2:43 p.m., my phone buzzed. "Hi, Miss Carter. This is Anna. Sure, I can talk today. Please let me know when." Anna. The name felt suddenly heavy, real. When I called her later that afternoon, my voice was calm, professional, like I'd done this 100 times before. "Hi, Anna. Thank you for your time. I just need to confirm a few details about your household. You mentioned you're a single parent?" There was a pause, then a small laugh. Tired, kind. "Yes, it's just me and my son. Though his father helps sometimes." My pulse spiked.
Oh, I asked softly. That's wonderful. Can I ask how long he's been involved? She sighed, and in that sound I heard years of resignation. It's complicated. He wasn't there at first. When I got pregnant, he disappeared. Said he wasn't ready. I raised my son alone for a while. Then a few years ago, he came back, said he wanted to help. He's been sending money, visiting once or twice a week. I could hear her stirring something in the background. Maybe soup, maybe tea. Her voice carried the rhythm of someone used to doing everything alone. Has he been consistent with support? I asked, steadying my tone. Mostly. He tries. He has a family now. A wife, I think. He said she doesn't know about us, and I didn't want to cause trouble. He's not a bad man, just scared. I swallowed hard. Did he ever tell you why he didn't come back earlier?
There was a pause. Then quietly, she said, "He told me his father died around the same time our son was born. He said he was ashamed that he couldn't face being a dad when his own father had just passed. Said he'd failed me, failed the baby, but he promised to make it right. The silence that followed was unbearable. I realized then Ethan hadn't met her after me. He'd met me after her. The timeline shifted in my head like an earthquake, rearranging everything I thought I knew. He'd built his marriage to me on a foundation already cracked by another life. "Does your son know?" I asked softly. She exhaled. "He knows that's his dad. But I told him his father's busy. That's why he can't stay long. He brings gifts sometimes, toy cars, books, things I can't afford. He's good with him, you know? He loves that boy." Her voice broke slightly at the end, and I had to bite my lip to stop my own tears. I wanted to hate her, but how could I? She was living the same lie, just on a different side of it. We were both women orbiting the same man, each fed half the truth. When the call ended, I sat in silence for a long time. The kitchen felt colder, the ticking clock louder. I could still hear Anna's voice, soft, worn down, forgiving. And beneath her words, I heard Ethan's, his stories, his excuses, his careful omissions. It wasn't just betrayal. It was architecture. A system of lies built carefully, lovingly, to keep both lives upright. That night, I opened my laptop. I didn't cry this time. I documented. I took screenshots of the GPS logs, every route, every timestamp. I downloaded our joint bank statements and highlighted every withdrawal that led to Wilston Market, Little Sprouts Toy Store, Eastfield Rent LLC. I photographed receipts I found in his coat pockets, the faint smell of another detergent still clinging to the fabric. Every detail became a piece of evidence. Each click of the mouse, each saved file was like stitching armor around my breaking heart. Because I knew now this wasn't just about love or loss. This was about control. Ethan thought he held all the cards, that his silence was power, that my trust was blindness. He was wrong. If he could build a secret life, I could build a plan. The kind of plan that doesn't scream or beg, the kind that waits, watches, and strikes when the time is right. I didn't know exactly what I'd do yet. Divorce? Exposure? Something quieter, sharper? But for the first time in weeks, I felt something that wasn't pain. I felt purpose. I turned off the lights and sat in the dark, the glow of my laptop screen reflecting in my eyes like the shimmer of resolve. Ethan came home an hour later, humming softly under his breath, carrying the scent of rain and guilt. He didn't notice the change in me. He didn't see the shift in my posture, the calm in my tone. He kissed my cheek, muttered something about a meeting that ran late, and went upstairs. I smiled after him. A real smile,
Not of love, but of clarity. Because now, for the first time since the night on Willow Street, I wasn't lost. I was ready.
Saturday mornings used to be my favorite. Soft light through the curtains, the smell of coffee, the faint hum of normalcy. But that morning felt different. It wasn't peace that filled the air. It was precision. I'd set the table for brunch. Eggs, fruit, the good china we rarely used. Everything looked beautiful, even picture perfect. That's how lives should end, I thought. Neatly, elegantly, with no warning. Ethan was humming in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, buttering toast like any other morning. If I hadn't known what I knew, I might have believed the illusion. But now, every gesture of his felt rehearsed, every smile a costume. I had invited two of his colleagues, Tom and Leah, the ones he often mentioned from late-night project meetings. They'd agreed cheerfully over text, happy for a relaxed weekend hangout. When they arrived, Ethan looked genuinely surprised. "Maya, you didn't tell me we were having company," he said, flashing that familiar, polite smile. "Oh," I said lightly, "I thought it'd be nice to see the people keeping you so busy lately." His eyes flickered, a brief, almost invisible flash of unease. But then he recovered, nodding. "Sure, that's nice." I watched him pour orange juice, his hand steady, his face smooth. He was good at this, pretending. So good, in fact, that I wondered how many years he'd practiced it. We sat together, the four of us, laughing in all the right places. The conversation drifted easily. Office jokes, new clients, weekend plans. For a moment, it was almost normal. Until Leah said it. "So, Ethan, did you ever finish that prototype you were working on last week? Tom and I couldn't find your updates in the system." I felt it, the air tightening. Ethan froze for a heartbeat, his fork hovering midair. "Oh, right, that one. I was finalizing some revisions from home that night." Tom frowned slightly. "From home? I thought you were out. You said you had family stuff, something urgent." Leah laughed softly, oblivious. "Yeah, he always disappears when we're stuck doing late-night reports. We joke that he's allergic to overtime." The room went very still. Ethan's smile faltered just slightly, but enough. His hand trembled when he set the fork down. And I just sat there, smiling faintly, my pulse calm and steady. "Oh, that's strange," I said softly. "I told him he was working late those nights." Tom blinked. "Really?" "No, the whole week was light for us. We all left by 6. Silence. Thick. Stretching. Leah's eyes darted between us, confusion dawning. "Oh, sorry, maybe I misunderstood?" Ethan interrupted, his voice a touch sharp. "It's fine, miscommunication. I probably mixed up dates." But his tone was cracking, the smoothness fading, his usual confidence thinning like worn paper. I met his eyes. "You should eat, honey. You must be exhausted from all that work." The sarcasm was quiet, surgical. It sliced just deep enough. Leah excused herself first, awkwardly laughing. Tom followed quickly after, muttering something about picking up his kids. The moment the door closed behind them, the house fell silent again. Ethan stood there for a moment, staring at the closed door, his breathing uneven. Then he turned to me. What was that? I leaned back against the counter, folding my arms. What was what? "You ambushed me in front of my coworkers?" I tilted my head. "No, Ethan. I just served brunch. You served the lies."
His face paled. "Maya, Don't start. Start? I cut in. Oh no, you started this years ago. I'm just catching up. He blinked, his jaw tightening. You don't know what you're talking about. I smiled, not cruelly, but with a kind of exhausted calm. Really? Then maybe you should explain this. I reached into my phone and opened the GPS app, the same one he had insisted we install for safety. The map lit up between us, the blue dot still saved in history. Willow Street, I said quietly. That's not your office. His eyes flicked to the screen, then to me. In that instant, I saw it. The collapse, the moment the scaffolding of lies couldn't hold any more. His shoulders slumped, his lips parted, but no sound came out. Finally, he whispered, "It's not what you think." "Then what is it, Ethan?" I asked. My voice didn't tremble. I had already done my crying. "Who lives there? Why is there a child calling you Dad?" He froze, then exhaled long and slow like surrender. "It's my son," he said, his voice cracked on the word. "He's mine." The words hit me harder than I had expected, even though I already knew. Seeing it, hearing it from him made it real in a way that screenshots never could. He sank into a chair, rubbing his temples. "It was before us. I didn't even know she had had the baby until years later. I wanted to tell you I did, but I thought you'd leave." I stared at him, unable to look away. He wasn't the villain I had imagined. Not entirely. He looked small, broken, terrified, but pity didn't erase betrayal. "So, you lied to me to protect me from pain. But don't you see? The lie was the pain." His eyes filled, red and wet. "Maya, please, I didn't want to lose you." I shook my head slowly. "You already did." The silence after that was suffocating. Just the sound of the clock ticking, one beat for every truth that had died between us. He reached for me, but I stepped back, not in anger, just finality. There was nothing left to say. He buried his face in his hands, whispering things I couldn't bear to hear. Apologies, excuses, promises made too late. I turned away, letting my gaze fall on the sunlight hitting our family photos, the smiling faces on the wall, the ones that once meant something. For years, I had been part of a life that wasn't whole. Half of him was always somewhere else, a ghost I never met, but always felt. And now, there were no ghosts, just truth, cold, clean, and irreversible. When I finally spoke, my voice was quiet, almost kind. "I'll pack your things tomorrow. You'll need time to figure out where you belong." He looked up, broken. "Maya, please!" But I didn't stay to listen. I walked to the window, looking out at the world beyond our perfect little home. Somewhere out there, a woman was raising his son, a boy who didn't deserve to carry the shame of a coward's silence. And somewhere in here, I was reclaiming mine. Because love can survive distance, it can survive mistakes, but it cannot survive deceit. That morning, I stopped searching for answers. I already had them. And I wasn't afraid anymore. He lied to protect me from pain. But the lie was the pain. The silence after he left was louder than any fight we'd ever had. No shouting, no closure, just the dull sound of the front door closing and the echo of a life collapsing in on itself. I remember standing in the kitchen, my hands still wet from washing the same cup twice, staring at the space where his keys used to hang. It looked empty, but it felt like it was staring back at me, accusing almost. For days, the house became a museum of what once was. His toothbrush missing from the holder, his slippers still crooked under the bed, the faint smell of his cologne trapped in the folds of our curtains. I told myself I was okay, that his absence was better than his lies. But my body didn't believe me. My chest still clenched every night at 9:15, the exact time he used to text, "Working late, don't wait up." The worst part? The GPS app still showed his dot.
Still moving, still alive, still there. Every time I opened my phone, I swore I wouldn't look, but I always did. Watching him flicker across the city, from hotels to unfamiliar neighborhoods, it wasn't about obsession anymore. It was about proof that he still existed somewhere, that I hadn't imagined our years together, that he wasn't just a story I told myself. Days turned into weeks. Then one afternoon, a message popped up from an unknown number. He left us too. It was her, the woman from Willow Street. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I sat on the edge of the couch, phone trembling in my hand. She didn't write anything else, but she didn't need to. Those 4 words carried everything. The exhaustion, the confusion, the betrayal. He hadn't just abandoned me. He'd run from them too. From the son who called him Dad. From the secret he built out of guilt and cowardice. That night, I went for a drive. No destination, just the hum of the tires and the empty passenger seat beside me. I passed by the cul-de-sac where the truth had broken me open. The house was dark, no laughter, no warmth, just another lie that had burned out. I pulled over and stared at my phone again. His GPS dot blinked on the screen. Small, distant, meaningless. My thumb hovered over the remove location option. My pulse quickened. It felt like standing on a cliff's edge, about to jump into something unknown. But maybe that's what healing is, the moment you stop chasing what hurts you. I took one last look at the dot. Then I pressed delete. The screen went still. Blank. Silent. And for the first time in months, I felt something other than pain. I felt relief. The tears came quietly this time, not like before. No sobbing, no gasping, just quiet streams of release, as if every drop carried away a fragment of the woman who waited, doubted, forgave. I wasn't his wife anymore. I wasn't his victim either. I was just Maya, a woman who had followed a blinking lie and found herself at the end of it. That night, as I turned off my phone and stared out into the empty street, I whispered to the dark, "Some dots aren't meant to be tracked. They're meant to disappear." And with that, I finally let him go.
Months passed like slow, deliberate breaths. I rebuilt myself quietly, deliberately, the way one rebuilds a house after a storm. The walls were stronger this time, the foundation firmer. I found a new job, something that demanded my mind, my focus, my ambition, and in the rhythm of work, I discovered the rhythm of myself again. Mornings no longer carried the weight of expectation. I woke up, made coffee, opened my laptop, and for the first time in years, the quiet of the house didn't feel like waiting. It felt like space. Space for me. Space I could breathe in fully without looking over my shoulder. And then, one crisp morning, the mail brought a surprise. A legal notice. Ethan. Seeking amicable resolution. The words were polite, almost mundane, but my chest tightened anyway. A small, familiar anger flickered in me, not for the past, but for the audacity of thinking he could quietly waltz back into my life, hoping for forgiveness without consequence. I read the letter 3 times, then calmly folded it and set it aside. I had everything I needed. The GPS history, the bank statements, the screenshots of messages, the evidence of every withdrawal, every lie, every secret he had tried to keep hidden. For years, he had used information and technology to control perception, to build a life where his truths were invisible. Now, that same information became my weapon, my proof, my shield.
The day of the hearing, I arrived early, dressed sharply. The courthouse smelled like power and fear. Polished floors, echoing walls, hushed voices. I felt none of it. I was calm, focused, prepared. Ethan walked in looking smaller than I remembered, his shoulders hunched, his eyes scanning the room for allies, for escape. He did not find it in me. When it was our turn, he began with rehearsed charm, trying the old tactics, apologies, explanations, excuses. "I never meant to hurt you," he said, eyes glinting with false sincerity. I listened, politely, calmly. Then I opened my case folder. The GPS logs first, a map of his movements, dates and times matching the late nights he claimed he worked. The judge leaned in as I projected the routes. Lines crisscrossed the city, connecting office addresses to Willow Street, to grocery stores, to toy stores. The proof of a second life was undeniable. Next, the bank statements. Withdrawals matched the locations, each transaction time-stamped, annotated, cross-referenced with receipts and screenshots from my own phone. Finally, the messages, text after text, from him to the woman, confirming support, visits, small gifts. A digital paper trail of a man who had hidden the child from me for years. I didn't need to say anything. The evidence spoke for itself. The room was silent except for the judge's pen scratching across his notes. Ethan tried to interrupt once. "Maya, you don't understand." I held up my hand, calm, certain. I understand perfectly. That's why I'm not here to argue about custody or guilt. I'm here to show what is true. By the end of the hearing, the settlement was clear. Legally, I walked away with what was fair. Emotionally, I walked away with more than justice. I walked away with power. As I stepped outside into the sunlight, I felt the warmth hit my face differently than it had before. This wasn't just a morning, it was a marker, a moment where a life rebuilt on truth and courage finally outshone the shadows of lies. The GPS app, once the instrument of betrayal, had become the compass of justice. The same dots that had led me into heartbreak had now mapped his downfall. I didn't check my phone for his location anymore. I didn't need to. I had what he could never take: clarity, control, strength. For the first time in years, I felt a quiet, unshakable calm. A car honked in the street. People passed by. Life continued. But I wasn't moving through it as a ghost anymore. I was present, unbroken, whole. And somewhere deep inside, I smiled, because the one thing that had been used to deceive me had been turned into my truth. His lies had built walls, but my resolve had knocked them down. I walked away from the courthouse that day lighter than I had ever been, the city sprawling around me like a promise. And for the first time, I realized something important. Some betrayals aren't meant to destroy you. They're meant to teach you your own strength. His lies mapped his downfall.
The kitchen smelled faintly of coffee and toast, though I hadn't made either. The quiet was different now. Soft, deliberate, comforting. Not the kind that pressed against your chest or waited for a notification, a message, a lie. I leaned against the counter where it all began. The same counter I'd stared at for hours, wondering where he was, questioning every word he ever said. The same place where his working late texts had echoed in my head like a mantra I no longer believed. The light overhead was gentle, casting a warm halo over the room. The walls were the same, yet everything felt different. No tension, no waiting,
No need to check the phone every 30 seconds to see if his dot had moved. No more obsessive scrolling through GPS history, bank statements, messages. Nothing. I sipped a glass of water and let it slide down slowly, savoring the simplicity of it. For months, every quiet moment had been a countdown, a potential trap. Now it was just calm. I walked over to the phone and opened the GPS app one last time. My thumb hovered over the Remove Location Sharing button. I paused for a second, thinking of all the nights it had tormented me, the hours of anxiety, the moments I had driven through rain-slick streets, following a blinking dot that had once controlled my heart. And then I pressed it, permanently. The screen went black. Nothing blinked. Nothing moved. Nothing waited. I exhaled, a long, slow breath that felt like shedding a skin I hadn't realized I was still wearing. I thought of Ethan. Not angrily, not with bitterness, just clearly. He had been working late all right, late at pretending, late at hiding, late at constructing a life I could only ever see in fragments. I smiled faintly. I just stopped believing in his overtime. I moved to the window, the one that overlooked our quiet street. The night was calm, stars glimmering faintly, a street lamp glowing softly, the occasional car passing like a fleeting thought. I felt a quiet thrill in being able to stand there and simply exist, without calculation, without doubt. I thought of all the hours I had spent chasing the truth in darkness, following that GPS dot, my heart racing, my chest tight. And I realized that night was not about loss. Not really. It had been about discovery. Not of him. Not even of his lies. Of me. The woman I was before, anxious, trusting, hesitant, was gone. In her place was someone steady, calm, unshakable. Someone who could feel betrayal, heartbreak, and still move forward. Someone who could let go without crumbling. Someone who could see a blinking dot and decide what it meant instead of being controlled by it. I thought of the little boy, of Anna, of all the truths that had been hidden from me. My chest tightened briefly, a pang of empathy. I realized I didn't hate Ethan anymore. Not truly. He had lived the life he chose, and I had survived the one he tried to shatter. That was all. That was enough. I closed my eyes for a moment and let the memory of the stormy nights, the rain, the tension, the heartbreak, all wash over me. And then I let them go. Opening my eyes, I traced the pattern of light on the kitchen tiles, small reflections, like tiny stars at my feet. I thought about how far I had come from staring at a blinking dot to standing here, grounded, in full control of my own life. No one was tracking me. No one was dictating my peace. No one had power over the quiet inside me. I walked to the counter and ran my fingers across its smooth surface, remembering the first night I'd seen his car on Willow Street. The shock, the nausea, the heartbreak. And now, the same counter held no fear, no pain, only memory, the kind that taught me what I was capable of. I poured a glass of wine, red, bold, unapologetic, and held it in my hand like a small celebration, not for him, not for what I'd lost, but for me, for the life I had rebuilt, brick by brick, day by day, choice by choice. The night stretched beyond the window pane, the street quiet, the stars distant but steady. I felt it all, calm, strength, clarity.
I sat on the edge of the counter, one leg dangling, and whispered to the night, "He said he was working late, and in a way he was. He was working late at pretending. I just stopped believing in his overtime." I smiled, truly smiled. No sorrow, no guilt, no lingering doubt. I turned off the lights in the kitchen. The soft glow disappeared, leaving me in the gentle embrace of darkness. But it wasn't emptiness. It was freedom, the kind that lets you breathe deeply, fully, finally. I went back to the window, resting my hands lightly on the sill. The city below was quiet. The trees swayed gently in the night air. Somewhere, life continued. Cars passed, people laughed in distant apartments. The world moved. And so did I. Not lost, not waiting, not haunted. I was home. And that night, for the first time in what felt like forever, I slept in peace. Because some dots aren't meant to be followed. Some truths aren't meant to be hidden. And some women aren't meant to be controlled. Some journeys lead you to someone else entirely. Yourself. I turned one last time from the window, looking at the darkness stretching beyond the glass. A smile played across my lips. That night, I followed his GPS. I didn't lose my husband. I found my way home. And for the first time, I knew exactly who I was, where I belonged, and that I would never be waiting for anyone's lies again. The night was quiet. The world outside continued, and I slept. That night I followed his GPS. I didn't lose my husband. I found my way home.